Kevin here, top 100 financial advisor and best-selling author, and we are here to talk about the stock market. We've got to discuss inflation because it is the boogeyman of the stock market right now. I saw a post from the New York Post and had the covers like inflation, everything's more expensive, everything's bad, basically. Things are on fire, you should worry. I want to explain what inflation is, what's going on, why you probably shouldn't be as concerned, but also where you might want to consider investing given the landscape. So we've been talking about inflation really all year in different spurts. This, because we're in July, it's like, all right, we've seen this, we're here now, we need to do something. So let's go ahead and take it step by step and break it down for everybody to understand and act on and have some information. I think information is powerful. So the more information you got, the more confident you can be and the better investor you can be and just general person, right? So let's go ahead and get into it. So inflation by definition is the rising price of stuff. We say the rising price of goods. When I say we, I mean economists. So why I'm not necessarily a trained economist, my bachelor's degree is in economics. So I took a lot of tests and read a lot of books on this stuff. But essentially, it's just a rising cost of stuff. And inflation is normal, okay? So when we say normal, we expect 2 to 3% inflation on an average year on just stuff. It's why movie tickets, prior to what's going on in Disney Plus and all that kind of stuff, why movie tickets tend to get more expensive. It's why when you watch those old 50 movies, they say, get a hamburger for a penny, and now that same hamburger is like $1.50 or, what am I talking about, $1.50? Like $3 or $4, depending on where you go, right? So it can be a lot more expensive down the line. So that rising price of goods, that is what inflation is. It's why when we talk about our parents buying a house or our parents going to college, like college inflation is ridiculous. That's not normal. That's not growing at 3% at all. It's out of line. But all that stuff from like 1980s to now, 1970s to now, all that stuff, that's inflation. That's why costs tend to slowly gain and trickle up. Now, in this environment, inflation is a little higher than what we expect. So, 2.5%, 3% is normal. Now we're at 5. I want to say it was like 5.4, 5 and some change, which is like, all right, this is not great. And when that happens, there are 2, maybe even 3 things that investors are concerned about. Number one, it makes it more expensive for us to go buy stuff. So gas is more expensive. Perhaps its computers are becoming more expensive. All these things are making it harder. If your paycheck is the same, but everything else is going up, that's not any fun, right? But also as a business and investor perspective, not every business can pass on those costs to consumers. If I am, let's say I'm a grocery store or something like that, and I buy something for this much, and I sell it for this much, that's called margin, right? That's the margin that I make. Well, if the costs are more expensive now, and I know that you're not going to buy it at 99 cents, or you're not going to buy it above 99 cents, then that means that the money I was making is now smaller, which means my profits are smaller, which is why I say, like, your margins are shrinking, or margins across the board are shrinking, because the cost of the stuff that I was buying and selling, or the things I was creating, buying all of the raw materials, where I'm making stuff out of wood, or I'm buying fruit and I'm selling it. Maybe I'm edible arrangements, right? I have to buy fruit and then put it in this nice thing and then sell it to you. Well, if the fruit is getting more expensive, then I'm making less and less money. And I can't necessarily always just raise the price, because if I raise the price too much, you as a consumer say, nah, I'm not buying that anymore. I'm going to go somewhere else. I'll make my own edible arrangement, right? So that's the pressure that it has on businesses. So those are some of the main concerns from an investor, stock market perspective, and from a consumer perspective. But then you have what's called the Federal Reserve. They're the ones that control interest rates. So what you pay on your house, what you might pay on a car, all what you pay on your credit card, what you get in your savings accounts, that's all, directly or indirectly controlled by the Federal Reserve. When inflation is too high, which we don't always have what that number is, that's why we listen to people like Jay Powell, the chairman of the Fed. When he talks, everybody listens and kind of like gets real quiet to see what he says. But when inflation is too high, they raise interest rates. When they raise interest rates, that calms down inflation, prices kind of come back down to normal, and everything kind of settles out. The problem is, though, when they raise interest rates, that affects the stock market, and that makes things a little more difficult, because from a consumer perspective, right, if I'm buying a house, which we're in the process of doing now, I want to buy now because interest rates are really low. Well, if you raise interest rates, Well, that's not great for me. So I'm not going to buy a house. If I'm not buying a house, guess who's not getting paid? The bank, right? And that now bank stocks, Capital One, JP Morgan, Bank of America. Now I'm like, oh, I don't know how that's going to look, right? So all this stuff has a ripple effect. If inflation is too much, the Federal Reserve is going to do something. If the Federal Reserve is going to do something, investors need to react, and that's why inflation is such a big deal. And it's been a big deal a lot of the year. Why is inflation even going up in the first place? Because things are reopening, because people are flooding back into the market, and by market I mean like flooding outside, hotels, used cars, all these things. You got to get back out there and get back into normal life, but supply and demand is always going to be a case. It's always going to be a problem when you got too many people running into stuff and buying things, but you don't have enough people who are working in those spaces. That's when you start to see these increased prices. So you can hopefully that paints the entire picture, right? So a lot of people buying stuff, not a lot of things being made still because of COVID. That raises prices. If prices are too high, then the Federal Reserve is going to raise interest rates. If they raise interest rates, we're not going to buy, and that's going to affect businesses. And it's all a cycle, and that's economics 101. All right, so that's what's going on. But here's why you should not worry. There are a few things. Number one, we economists already knew a lot of this was going to happen. It is normal that when we hit reopenings, even after 2008, anytime we hit a recession or even a depression, shortly thereafter when things start to improve, there is a little bit of inflation. That is normal. That is fine. Number two, inflation isn't normal across the board. What's the best way to say this? It's not... Everything isn't up 5%, just everything is 5% like that. A lot of this, about 1/3 of this inflation number is on used cars. Used cars are the problem. And I've got a crazy stat here that really encapsulates that. So this is the largest monthly increase ever reported for used cars and trucks since that index was created. It was published back in January 1953. So we're seeing the largest increase in cars, just used car prices, going all the way back to 1953. That's the problem. That's the problem. And why do we have a shortage or an increase in prices for used cars to this degree? The reason is the chip shortage. We don't have enough semiconductor chips to make some of the newer cars, which is one of the reasons why I invested in Ford, because they're doing well now. When they produce more cars, they'll be better off. So that's the problem. The chip shortage was also the reason I still can't get a PS5 today, which is a problem. But because we don't have enough of those microchips to make some of the fancy, cool technologies, these new cars, that's why people are flooding the used car market. I had to go get a used car too, because I need to travel now. I got 2 kids. We got to get around. The world's opening up a bit. Daddy need a new ride, right? But I wanted to go to get a smart used car, so people were bidding the prices up. It wasn't easy for me to negotiate because if I didn't buy, there were 5 other people who were willing to do so. So that's the issue. So all this stuff is coming together at the same time. If you're considering buying a car, you're financing, rates are low right now, right? And that's the other problem that people aren't realizing. Because last year when the Fed cut interest rates, the reason they do that is to make it more convenient for people to buy, to make it cheaper for people to buy, and to spur the economy. So now it makes sense for a lot of people to buy a home because the rates are really low. I can borrow at a cheap rate that I may not see again for another 10 or 15 years. If I'm buying a car and the rates are low, it makes a whole lot more sense for me to go buy now. So it's super competitive to get people to buy cars, to buy homes, to take out business loans, and really get the entire economy pushing. But if rates go too high or costs go too quickly, then the fear is Fed is going to increase those interest rates. It's going to be less impactful and less important, or I'm going to have less incentive to go borrow and buy and do all that stuff, and then those businesses suffer. So that's the dynamic that we're in. But I would not be too afraid of too much inflation at this point in time, because we know this to be normal. We want to get people out there. It's going to be like this until some of the shortages are fixed. Now, as an investor, where should you go, or where are some places that you should at least consider? Ironically enough, it's one of the companies that I've been telling y'all about that I said was a sleeper stock, and people looked at me crazy in December of 2020. Google is one of those places. You've got two routes, I think. You've got the route where it's easier to pass on those costs to consumers. Think maybe a Target, definitely something like Pepsi, where, you know, costs go up. If you really are loyal to Pepsi products, if you're really loyal to, I don't know, Dasani, which I know a lot of people aren't, but if you're already paying $1.50 for a bottle of water, $1.75 ain't gonna really hurt you because you really like Pepsi or you really like whatever product it is. And I'm sorry, Dasani is actually Coca-Cola. I think it's Aquafina is Pepsi. I apologize. So if you're really loyal to something like that, you're not really concerned about paying an extra 25, 75 cents here or there. But the other part of it is tech space. Google doesn't really make that much stuff. They're not hurt by inflation per se, because if I'm clicking on YouTube ads or I am still Googling things, they ain't got nothing to do with inflation. They don't have to buy product in the same way that a Ford may have to, right? So that's a place that you want to consider. I've said for a while the digital ad space is going to be where you might want to be in December 2020. It's really looking nice right now. So even a Facebook might make sense. A Google definitely makes sense. Microsoft, but to a lesser degree, because they have to build physical products like this, and the chips and everything else that go in here make it more expensive. So not to say that Microsoft isn't a good play, but it's not as good in terms of inflation. So you want to watch out for stuff like that. If you're holding something right now and it's kind of hurt by inflation, I wouldn't worry about it. I'm not changing my investing strategy right now because I've baked a lot of this in. You can go back and check the videos. We've been talking about inflation for a while. So this is something that we have known, but you don't want to get freaked out by it right now. We're not at a, I'm not gonna wake up tomorrow and the dollar be worthless, okay? Is it worth less? Like not as much as what it was maybe last year? Yes, that is true. But inflation has always been there. We've always had like 3% inflation on average. This is just a little bit more because we have supply and demand are not at the exact levels. We have way more demand than we do supply, especially for used cars, especially for the PlayStation 5, especially for a lot of the things that people really want and need right now, houses being one of them. It's why so many people are overpaying for a house, because the demand for houses and people moving to the suburbs is not as high as the supply. The supply is low. You can't build that many houses that quickly. That's why those prices are shooting up, which makes it worse on consumers, and we get right back into the cycle about interest rates. So that's what's going on. I wanted to give you a tangible example. I hope that helps. Let me know if it does. If it's too confusing, you want me to talk slower, feel free to let me know in the comments. But hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Right before we leave, before I say bye, I want to say this one last thing. I am trying to win an award for the Plutus Foundation for 2 categories. I'll put the categories in the comments. But generational wealth, I think we talk about that a lot, right? We had the article in Business Insider, but also about current events. So if you have been paying attention in the last maybe 18 months now, I have done a video Monday through Friday almost every single day about what was happening when the market dropped, what's going on with inflation right now, what stocks make sense, almost every day. So YouTube's, Facebook's, I don't know why I'm adding an S to that, but the YouTubes, the Facebooks, the Instagrams, like you'll see close to 300 and some odd videos about what's going on right then in the moment and answering questions and things of that nature. So please nominate your boy. The deadline is the 15th, which is tomorrow. So definitely go out and submit me. Just copy the website, buildingbread.com, put it in the comments or inside the, y'all see, read the section. Nominate me, please. It's like the Oscar of personal finance. I got nominated last year. I never won the award, so that'd be real cool. All right, I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.